The Disgaea franchise has garnered a cult following over the years, but it's never quite crossed over into mainstream success. Nippon Ichi seems content on maintaining the status quo with Disgaea 4. It's another tactical RPG with the quirky humor and characters that set the series apart. But will its complex system and oddball atmosphere scare most players away?
You forgot to include dude in all of your lines! What should I do with all the sardines I promised to give them?
Disgaea 4 sees the former tyrant Valvatores setting out to free the Netherworld from the evil grip of the Corruptiment. Make no mistake, the game's dialogue-heavy cutscenes are crafted to suit a specific taste, and they're difficult to stomach if you're not into anime cliches and internet memes. There's a certain charm to the self-parody, but the way the game repeatedly breaks the fourth wall is frankly tired. And needless to say, given how zealous the game is about telling its story, the experience can be downright torturous if you aren't into them.
Let's go, everyone! We're going to turn the worlds into Hades!
The core structure of Disgaea 4 is easy to grasp, but it's the outer layers that will ruffle up those without an immense level of patience. This is a game that rarely holds your hand, offering you half-baked explanations for even the most basic of activities, and hopes you'll explore the mechanics on your own in order to achieve full comprehension. The game's hub world is an overwhelming environment with a multitude of facets to interact with, every one more complex than the next. Many of these mechanics are held back until later to give you some respite from all the information thrown your way, but if you don't tread carefully, Disgaea 4 can be a brutally unforgiving game. The hub world can easily consume dozens of hours of your time, and one of the most unique activities available to you there is the Senate mechanic, where you can try to get new elements incorporated into the game by way of a vote. You can bribe delegates to vote your way, and occasionally outsiders will crash your party and wreak havoc either in the form of AI-controlled enemies or characters from another player's game, courtesy of the online component. This online feature can quickly turn a casual experience into a chaotic nightmare.
Hi, dude!
What's most frustrating is the game's low threshold for failure. It's easy to make a wrong decision, and that one mistake can cost you dearly. Falling in battle sends you back to the beginning of the game with your stats intact, and though you can revert to a previous save to try again, the inconvenience associated with doing so is the game's way of telling you to be more careful. It purposely makes it a hassle to reload old saves, forcing you to exit out to the main menu or reset the game. This all amounts to a very steep learning curve, but once you clear the game's initial hurdle, things begin to click and run more smoothly. If you're accustomed to games that ease you into the groove early on and cut you some slack, Disgaea 4's way of doing things will be a shock. This is one of the most complicated strategy RPGs available, and one best suited for those with a high tolerance for an unforgiving challenge.
My lord, please don't take this idiot so seriously.
You'll spend a lot of time in Disgaea involved in prep work and micromanagement, but the bulk of the action transpires on the battlefield. Each of the game's several chapters comes with a handful of arenas where you'll face off against not only enemy forces, but also the terrain itself. The grid-based environments include a color-coded system for certain panels that correspond to various conditions. Accounting for where you or your enemy will end up on the board is crucial, and it only gets more complicated by the fact that you can radically alter the landscape by utilizing blocks called geos to reconfigure the colors of certain spaces. Disgaea's isometric camera angles make it quite difficult to get a good view of the action at times, as well as to move your units with the D-pad efficiently. You can obviously use the analog stick for a greater degree of precision, but when the board features drastic height variations and drop-offs, a simple task often takes longer than it should. Otherwise, the combat system is one of the more exhaustive in the genre, with lots of flexibility in terms of customizing a character's skills and latent abilities. However, it's a heavy time investment to build your characters up, and it's not easy to correct course once you've gone down a certain path. You can conduct battle in a simple and straightforward manner in the early goings, but eventually conditions arise that demand more involved strategies. Combining attacks with other members and utilizing elements of the terrain are key concepts that you'll need to grasp, but there are even more complex variables to consider down the road. The ability to stack characters, or throw characters for instance, allows you to reach areas of the battlefield inaccessible without use of these techniques. Eventually, missions become so complicated that they essentially become giant puzzles. Strategy RPGs tend to be complex in general, but Disgaea 4 takes this to a whole new level. This is a game that requires a great deal of patience and methodical thought. Those who lack these qualities won't find any redeeming value here. The Disgaea series hasn't changed much since its debut on the PS2, and aside from the clarity of the sprite work, this installment doesn't look much different from its predecessors. Environments are comprised of simple models with bland textures and effects that wouldn't have been considered impressive even a generation ago. Much of the voice work is laughably bad and caters to a demographic that embraces overacting. The soundtrack is a marked improvement over the last game, but with such a dated look and feel, its impact is diminished.
Time to bust some balls!
Disgaea's bizarre story and ridiculous characters are difficult to tolerate, but it's the grueling challenge that'll ultimately make many cower away. However, underneath all the style and flash is an intricate RPG that forces you to dig in deep and puts your brains to the test.
Sardines, of course!